crime?
He was not proud of defending John Lennon in the same way as he announced that he was proud of defending Epstein.
What's this got to do with Israel?
This has got to do with the fact that this man, the credibility of this man is on the line. He defends Israel on the one hand, and on the other hand, he defends Epstein. I think the public should know this.
Do you want me to play? Do you want me to play the clips?
He's proud of it.
Mohammed, do you want me to play the clips of you
and I don't know,
do the rounds on social media saying some very inflammatory things? Do you want me to?
Why are you not looking at me?
Because I'm looking at the three of us.
I'm right here.
You can turn to me, then the viewers see me and you looking at
me man to man.
Fine.
Look at me man to man. Look at my eyes.
Yes, it's called an aesthetic thing for videos.
Okay, now, the first thing I wanted to say was that this man's credibility is something which is shocking that is we're even entertaining.
What do you base it on?
On the fact that he actually defended Epstein, and after the fact, he said he was proud of it. He was in Epstein's vicinity. He was in Epstein's vicinity. He had a massage in his vicinity. This is the kind of person that we're having on the show defending Israel. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is, in the first interaction where me and you were talking about October the 7th, we spent about 3 or 4 minutes actually talking about sexual assault allegations, if you remember that. And actually here, what we have is Israeli soldiers like Mir, from Unit 100, and that's on The Guardian, it's on Sky News, it's on all these kinds of platforms, coming out, and there's videographic evidence of him raping another man. I haven't heard condemnation from you, and I don't expect to hear it from him who defended Epstein. Well, this shows you the bias in the coverage for a year, where we know the ICJ have said that there's a plausible genocide.
You haven't been watching my show.
I think I have.
No, you haven't.
Have you spoken about me?
You're talking complete bullshit.
OK, tell me why.
Right?
Tell me why.
Because, A, I did condemn what you've just talked about in a previous debate.
Good.
Right?
Dershowitz, do you condemn it?
Yes, of course. I condemn any rape of anybody and any assault on anybody who's in captivity.
And you also condemn the right of rape protest that took place in Israel. And you acknowledge that there's a problem in Israel with this?
If any rapes took place, they will be investigated. They will be fully investigated. They will be court-martialed.
Do you acknowledge that there's a problem in Israeli society?
And if anybody is convicted of that, they deserve their punishment.
Do you acknowledge that there's a problem in
What about the problem with Hamas? Raping women.
I have no compunction.
On October the 7th.
I have no compunction condemning Hamas for anything that they've done. You've said that. You've asked me before, and I've told you before. I have no moral scruple. Neither do the majority of the Muslim world. I tell you now, anything that Hamas has done, we have condemned in the first instance. But we're not seeing the same level of coverage with Hamas as we are seeing with these people that are shoving rods off people's ass and raping people on videographic evidence. And you have 3,000 people, you talk about the hostages, you've got 3,000 people in essentially captivity, according to Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem, who are prisoners of war of Israel, and we're spending a fraction of the time speaking about them as compared to speaking about the hostages. This shows you the inherent bias.
Well, there's no comparison. There's no comparison between innocent hostages who did nothing wrong and people who are being charged with criminal offenses.
They're not charged with criminal offenses. That's why you're meant to know better. You're meant to know better than that.
But they are charged
They're
with
not charged with criminal offenses.
But you can't,
They're not charged with criminal offenses.
Compare.
They are arrested without charge.
You can't compare a 3-year-old
They're not charged with criminal offences.
Don't shout over each other. We can't hear the answer.
Well, he's lying to the public.
Allow him to respond.
Go ahead.
To somebody who's a member of Hamas.
Say that
Sorry,
again.
Adam, we couldn't hear you because he was shouting.
I was shouting. Say it
Alan,
again.
he says the 3,000...
I'm saying you can't compare
Alan, he
a
says the
3-year-old
3,000...
baby...
Alan, just to be clear, he said the 3,000 people he's talking about were all arrested without charge, and therefore they've not been charged with crimes. Your response to that?
Well, if they were, they should be released. Nobody should be arrested without charge. If you're held for a security reason...
Pathetic.
I will say what I want. It's uncensored. Good boy.
Let me finish, please. Let me make my point.
Try and have a proper debate.
Can I make my point,
I'll
please?
say what I like.
Can I make my point? Let me make my point. Great Britain confined tens of thousands of people without charges during the Second World War.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Did the same.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Should we talk about what Hitler done?
And as Elie Wiesel once said, always believe the threats of your enemies more than the promises of your friends. And so Israel has to act on the assumption that Hamas is going to try to do this again and again.
Okay, Mohammed,
we've listened.
Mohammed, you've said so far, unless I'm wrong, you don't support Hamas, you don't support Hezbollah. So there's probably more bits of agreement here with Alan Dershowitz and me than you might like to admit if you don't support those two groups.
Okay, so I don't see what that's got to do with anything. We were talking about.
I said at the start I wanted to find points of agreement.
Sure.
Can we all agree that Hamas and Hezbollah are a bad thing?
I can agree that the white man, the Western man, has tried to use social constructs like terrorism to try and absolve themselves from all the things that they.
What would you call them, Hamas and Hezbollah?
Well, I mean, just like any human being. Just like any human being, they can sometimes be oppressive and they can sometimes be on the right side of history.
Most human beings do not do what Hamas did on October the 7th.
Well, in the Zionist entity, they do. And they do worse than that.
They don't.
They don't.
Israel's never committed an atrocity on that scale.
On what scale?
On that scale.
Explain. What scale?
Killing 1,200 people.
They've killed 40,000.
Sorry, in one day. Massacring
they've killed 40,000
Israelis that could get their hands on.
Hold on.
Kidnapping
On
children.
the 23rd of September, what happened?
Holocaust
on the
survivors.
23rd, we were talking about October
raping
7th.
and abusing women, beheading people. Oh, you don't think that happened, do you?
Well, hold on. You just said raping and abusing. We just started the show with an admission that there's a problem in Israeli society. That there was.
I'm talking about Hamas.
Yeah, but you just said Israel doesn't.
We both condemned what you talked about earlier in relation to
So why are you saying Israel don't do that? What's wrong with you?
I didn't say that.
You just said that now.
No, I didn't.
You said Israel doesn't do it, and then you just listed 3 or 4 things, and that was one of the things that you just listed.
No, I said Israel had never...
Am I speaking a foreign tongue?
Sorry, listen to what I'm saying. I said Israel never perpetrated an atrocity on that scale.
Okay. On
in
the 23rd
one day against the people of Palestine. They never have.
Well, hold on. How many civilians died on October the 7th?
Civilians about 800.
Oh, sure. All right.
But hang on.
Hold on.
But nearly 7,000 more were wounded.
Sure.
7,000
What happened on the 23rd of September?
Were wounded.
What happened on the 23rd of September?
7,000.
Okay, sure.
Think about that number.
Okay, no problem.
That's the scale of people who were attacked on that day.
Are we talking over each other? It's 2-on-1 now.
8,000 people were attacked.
No problem. On the 23rd
One of the most horrendous terror attacks.
Is this going to be a monologue or is it a dialogue?
History. I'm telling you some facts.
I know the facts.
You may not like it, but I'm telling you them.
Okay, I'm telling you, on the 23rd of September, Israel attacked Lebanon. How many people died? How many civilians died, according to the Lebanese health, the Ministry of Health?
I believe it's about 2,000 was the last recorded number I saw.
No, in one day. On the 23rd of September.
Including combatants, including many combatants.
No, on the 23rd, how many died?
How
many died? Why don't we have a year commemorating the 23rd of... A year commemorating the 23rd of September, since we're having a year commemorating the 7th of October, and about 600 people died, 650 people, civilians died on that day. That's quite close, isn't it?
We don't know they're civilians. They don't distinguish between
8,000 people were attacked.
We're not talking about attack. We're talking about dead. What's wrong with you? Why are you not looking at me again? You're crying. Are you crying?
Because the viewers are seeing the three of us together.
I see that there's tears in your eyes.
There are no tears in my eyes.
What's going on?
There's a slight sense of exasperation.
Sure, there should be. Because you are employing...
What do you think I am?
I think you said it yourself with your interview with Mehdi Hassan. I think you're just biased. You talked about tribes.
Who am I biased against?
You're biased against anything anti-Western. Clearly. You said...
What a ridiculous statement.
Because you said it yourself. You said the reason why you have such a... I think you're just biased. You talked about tribes.
Who am I biased against?
You're biased against anything anti-Western. Clearly. You said...
What a ridiculous statement.
Because you said it Why is it pathetic?
Attacking lawyers for defending people is so pathetic.
Being proud of it, yeah.
Of all the ad hominem attacks you could use, it is the least effective
what do you think of Epstein?
and the most embarrassing.
You're defending him too much today.
I think Epstein was a disgusting human being.
So he's proud of defending him. Do you condemn him for that?
Well, I just don't care. I'm talking about Israel.
Oh, you don't care now, but why is it disgusting?
I'm talking about Israel.
Opinion. That's your opinion. And you were talking about the pager attack, and you said about it that was an act of military brilliance. I'm sure if it happened here in Sainsbury's and a little white boy was killed, you wouldn't say that, would you?
You know what? You know, Francis, you seem such a nice guy, and then I'm reminded that you were recorded with the heaviest punching power in the history of heavyweights, and you were pound to pound with him the entire fight.
We do all the exam before to check if we are healthy, if we are in a good condition to do that extreme, to go through those extreme.
%30 of Democrats said they wished that Donald's girlfriend, who's been cast aside. Look, let me say two things that are important here.
From who?
One, pre-COVID.
I don't like any of them.
Let's go to early February 20. I appreciate that, actually, because there are a lot of awful, dumb politicians. We can agree on that. And in fact, there's way too many all over the world, especially in America.
Absolutely.
I want to bring you in on that.
On American presidential ticket in my life. I think the challenge that J.D. Vance is going to have, right? J.D., whatever you think about him, is a Trump is a super bright guy. You can't succeed in business like he has without a lot of talent.
Well, he didn't.
Tim Walz's a moron.
He's a miserable failure
an absolute
in business.
moron.
6 major
He is going to get embarrassed, I think. And the thing that J.D. Vance is going to be, pay attention to this, Piers, the thing that J.D. Vance is going to have to be careful of is that he doesn't pummel Tim Walz so much that people start feeling bad for him. Walz hasn't done a single solo interview with a national media figure since he was elevated. This is a guy whose wife bragged about leaving the windows open so they could smell the burning rubber of Minneapolis. This is a guy who lied about his military service, who is utterly unqualified to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Of everybody on tickets, I don't think Kamala's qualified. I think Tim Walz, her worst decision. She should have taken Josh Shapiro. I think he's going to get embarrassed on Tuesday night.
Cenk, the dumbest we've ever seen, apparently. Tim Walz?
Yeah. So look, guys, you guys live in an amazing imaginary world. They're like, if Trump wanted to be dictator, he would probably, if he lost an election, have somebody or a lot of people rush the Capitol and then not stop them, even as they're trying to murder his vice president. And he would try to terminate the Constitution. He did do that. He did all of that. And you guys don't acknowledge it. First Amendment. Kamala Harris has never said anything against the First Amendment. Donald Trump threatens to imprison anyone who criticizes him. You guys live in a delusional, imaginary world. So in your world,
what person has Donald Trump ever prosecuted as a Democrat? Shouldn't you be able to point to at least one?
No, by the way, you know who's prosecuting Democrats? Joe Biden. I got no love for Joe Biden, but he went after Senator Menendez. At least the federal authorities did. They went after Eric Adams. They went after Cuellar.
I'm saying if you're going to say Trump is going to try to put his political adversaries in prison, name one.
Hold on. Clay, let me answer the question. You know why the federal government, the FBI, Justice Department goes after someone? When they have evidence. Okay, so Trump says, I want Jeff Bezos arrested because some Washington Post wrote something mean about me. And then he goes, hold on, let me answer the question. Then he goes to the Department of Justice, and they go, yeah, but what evidence do you have against him? He was mean to me. And they're like, no, we're not going to prosecute him because he was mean to you. Grow up, you little child. So which leads us back to the debate. So we're talking about Tim Walz being unintelligent. Are you crazy?
So but you're like acknowledging, hold on, that he never has prosecuted any political adversary.
Hold on. Okay, well, he's the one who who came up with the lock her up chant. You guys, again, pretend it didn't happen when all of you were chanting, lock her up, she's our political opponent.
Office, he didn't
you guys loved it. You loved it.
Hold on, Cenk. Let's
get real.
But here's the thing.
And besides which, Donald Trump is a criminal. So, Clay, what do you want us to do? You pretend to be in favor of freedom, and you pretend to be in favor of equality in the Constitution. Donald Trump is a lifelong criminal. He's broken every law that we can imagine. And you go, oh, let him go. Let him go. He's our leader. He's our beloved leader. He should be above the law.
You are like a guy who got broken up with and can't get over it. This is so deranged. Like, Trump was never charged with a crime until he decided to run as a Republican after 75 years of being a public figure.
All right, let me bring in
Trump because I've always known he was a pea-brain little idiot. Donald Trump is the dumbest man we've ever seen in public life, and these guys are pretending he's smart. He's like, well, how could he be a successful? He's not a successful businessman. 6 major bankruptcies. The moron built 3 casinos in the same city.
He had a successful television show. He's built tons of buildings.
Hold on. Yeah, he had a television show
where
he yapped like he always does.
They never made a living
and where the
outside of the
producers
government.
fed him lines.
I can tell you he's got a very successful television show.
On Apprentice,
bar exam.
I can tell you his television show is very successful, and he showed extremely high levels of intelligence on that show, because he made me the winner of Celebrity Apprentice. Let me bring in Dinesh.
That's not a business.
Let me bring in Dinesh.
He's a carnival barker.
Actually, it made tons. Actually, the Apprentice, which he had a stake in, made tons of money, so that's not true. Dinesh.
He didn't run the business, did he, Piers?
Difficult.
Piers, don't lie. He didn't run the business, did he?
He did have a stake in the business of the brand of Apprentice. Yeah,
now you're playing word games. You said he had a stake in the business because he had equity in it as part of his deal as an actor. They hired him to be an actor acting as a businessman when they knew, and they say now, yeah, we knew he was a failed loser businessman.
Right.
But
he's
he was
so loud. Trump must be the most successful failed loser.
Ever done.
It's incredible that this pea-brained loser managed to become president against the most qualified candidate in American history, Hillary Clinton.
I can tell you
But there you go, Cenk. Let me bring in Dinesh.
Because the American people hate the establishment. That's why.
All right, Dinesh, on the VP debate, does it matter what happens on Tuesday night? Does it have any real consequence?
I think it does, in part because, well, certainly in the Trump case, Trump is well into his 70s. I do think that people are thinking a little bit beyond Trump. I think that the question is whether J.D. Vance will sort of inherit the Trumpian mantle, so to speak. I think the debate's going to be a contrast in styles. And that is to say that Tim Walz is clearly a kind of over-the-top a populist from the left. He gesticulates wildly. He's the kind of guy who tries to make, expressions of being an ordinary guy who fixes his own car. And now J.D. Vance is a little more cerebral. And this is, in a way, a contest for whose rhetoric is actually going to speak more to the white working class. And that appears to be a key swing constituency in the election. So it's 2 populists. One from the right and one from the left, with 2 different styles appealing to the same group of people.
I totally agree with that. Claudia, final word to you. The VP debate, do you think people of your generation, do they pay much attention to the VP debates, do you think?
Absolutely, and so much more than other years and other elections. Historically, we haven't seen that a vice presidential pick has much impact on the election. But this year, I mean, it's different. Everybody's eyes are on Tim Walz and what he's saying and what he's doing with his cars, and everybody's eyes are on J.D. Vance and what he's saying about this person and that person one day. And tomorrow, I do agree. I think that Josh Shapiro would have been a much better pick, and I think he would have killed J.D. Vance in a debate, but that's not the situation we're in right now. So I'm a little concerned for both of them, quite frankly, but excited to see what's going to happen.
All I would say is that before the presidential debate recently, I was utterly convinced that Donald Trump would flatline Kamala Harris in that debate, and I was completely wrong. So it's been a very surprising race.
Me too.
And I've given up making predictions. I'm going to watch it with great interest. Thank you to my panel. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
I expect that there will be some people named in these lawsuits that will raise some eyebrows.
How big an eyebrow raise are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about names as big as Diddy, potentially?
These are crimes that are so serious that it would likely leave Sean Combs in jail the rest of his life, or nearly for the rest of his life.
I think he has an out option, and that is popping a cyanide pill.
If he wanted to kill himself, he would have been dead already.
But Choke, I mean, you might have said the same thing about Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, you didn't wait for the best part yet. He's going to be indicted for the murder of Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G.
The shocking allegations levelled at Sean Diddy Combs have burst the floodgates on salacious claims about an industry many people believe harboured a monster. Understandably, the internet's ablaze with claims about these events and whether other powerful figures were involved too. Well, last week I interviewed Jaguar Wright, a singer-songwriter who's made claims about Diddy for years. Those claims had already received a lot of attention in the media across many platforms for many years. And that's the thing about platforms. The reality of the modern world is that pretty much everyone has a platform as long as they have something to say that other people want to hear. That's why we invited her on to be interviewed. The people making these claims have an audience with or without shows like mine. Well, Jaguar Wright unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves, but now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with the legal request to cut them from the original interview. Editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored. But, like the proverbial cries of fire in a crowded theatre, there are legal limits on us too. And we apologise to Jay-Z and Beyonce. Well, now Sean Diddy Combs is reportedly putting together an O.J. Simpson-style legal dream team to defend federal charges on sexual assault, sex trafficking and racketeering. It certainly looks like he's going to need all the legal help he can get. Well, last week, Houston attorney Tony Busby held a bombshell press conference to announce he's representing 120 alleged victims of the rap mogul, during which he gave new and disturbing details.
When we talk about the ages of the victims when the conduct occurred, it's shocking. Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one who was 15. 25 of the 120 individuals who are plaintiffs in these cases were minors at the time of the acts complained of.
In a moment, my panel will dissect and debate all of the latest developments, shocking developments. But first, I'm joined by attorney Tony Busby, who you just heard speaking there. Mr. Busby, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I want to read you a statement overnight from Janice Smalls Combs, who is Diddy's mother. It came by her lawyer, Natalie Figures. It says this: I come to you today as a mother that is devastated and profoundly saddened by the allegations made against my son, Sean Combs. It is heartbreaking to see my son judged not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies. To bear witness what seems to be like a public lynching of my son before he's had the opportunity to prove his innocence is a pain too unbearable to put into words. Just first of all, your reaction to that statement from his mother.
That's exactly what I would expect the mother to say. You know, these allegations are shocking. These allegations are egregious. And that's why they have court systems, because we will ferret this out in the court system. We intend to prove our cases. Obviously, we're not going to prove our cases at a press conference. And, you know, with all due respect to her, you know, I've talked to these victims and I believe them. So that's exactly what I would expect his mother to say. Your hotline took 12,000 calls in 24 hours, including many new allegations involving minors. At the moment, there's no class action. Each case you take will be represented individually. But just the fact you've got 120 already that you're repping, and you're getting so many calls, what does that tell you about the scale of all this? Well, you know, I know that's reported 12,000 calls in a 24-hour period. And of course, that's true. I want people to know that, you know, obviously that's not 12,000 people claiming to be victimized by Sean Combs. That's, you know, a large portion of those people calling are calling with, you know, words of support. Others were prank calls and crank calls, as you might imagine, in this kind of situation. What's most interesting to me and what's most helpful are people that call that have bits of information, bits of evidence, video, perhaps pictures. And then, of course, we're particularly interested in in people that had interaction with Mr. Combs and what they say happened to them and victims. But you know, I was trying to get my head around the fact that, you know, we're talking about thousands of people calling and hundreds of alleged victims. And how could that possibly be the case? But, you know, when you put that in context and you think about conduct that allegedly occurred over a 25-year period in multiple different venues, parties every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and the same MO each time has been alleged. Typically, it involves some sort of illicit substance placed in someone's drink, and then that individual is coerced or taken advantage of. And that's kind of the overarching theme here. And so a lot of these calls, you know, on first glance, you say, my goodness, that's just impossible that many people would call with information or who have been victimized. But when you look at it in the context of a long period of time in a particular modus operandi, it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, its numbers are staggering. You've also said that there are other big names that will come out in relation to these charges. He says the day will come, you said this, when you start naming names. When will that day be, and how big are these names that we're talking about?
Yeah, people are very interested in that, of course. That comment has been repeated back to me, as you might imagine, many times. And people are, you know, waiting with bated breath, hoping that, you know, I'm going to name these big celebrity names. But I can tell you this, I look at it in this context. If you attended one of these events, and we're talking about, you know, we've heard about the white party and the freak offs and the after parties, but there's also, you know, impromptu parties at studios, after parties from concerts, album release parties, hotel parties. I mean, the list goes on and on. But in my view, if you attended those and you saw or knew that somebody was being given drugs, that their drinks were being drugged, and you sat by and either participated in some of this activity or encouraged this activity or allowed it to go on and helped cover it up, or were in the room while it was happening and said nothing and did not intervene, and perhaps attended more of these parties knowing that this type of conduct was going to occur, it's my view, that may not be the criminal justice system's view, but it's certainly my view that you're complicit. And we intend to name people in these lawsuits. We're not going to do it in interviews. We're not going to do it, you know, without doing our due diligence, because obviously, you know, these types of allegations are very hurtful to people if they're not true, and very hurtful, frankly, if they are true. But if they're true, you shouldn't have been in the room and you shouldn't have been participating. So I anticipate that we're going to start filing lawsuits, and it may not be big names at first, but we have a long list of names. And you might imagine in situations like this, that when a victim tells us that this person was in the room or this person participated, we want to do as much due diligence as humanly possible before we file that case, because in the United States, in almost every state, public filings are in fact public. And, you know, when you name somebody in a lawsuit, the press is going to pick it up, and we're aware of that. So we're going to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's. And I expect that there will be some people named in these lawsuits that will raise some eyebrows.
Right. I mean, how big an eyebrow raise are we talking about? Because you've been hearing a lot of names, presumably, in the process of all these calls coming in. And you're a pretty smart lawyer, so you can probably work out the wheat from the chaff in terms of legitimate, plausible claims here in terms of victims. I mean, are we talking about names as big as Diddy, potentially?
I expect so. I expect so. You know, obviously those are the names that people are interested in, but I've tried to make sure people focus also on corporate entities, to include banks and hotels and perhaps even pharmaceutical entities that were maybe not directly involved, but were certainly benefiting and profiting from this kind of activity. You know, those I'm interested in as well. But you know, we've seen all over social media the pictures and video of all the various individuals that attended these parties. And, you know, you know, look, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. I know that at these types of parties, things go on. I know that there's, you know, sex is, you know, occurs out in the open and things like that. That's not illegal and that's not probably actionable. What I'm focused on is when people are lured to these parties, coerced at these parties, given illicit drugs at this party without their knowledge, and then they're taken advantage of. And people in the room know this is happening and participate in it and do nothing about it and then tacitly cover it up. Those people, in my mind, are just as liable as the individuals who engage directly in the activity.
And of the 120 cases you've taken on so far, what percentage involve minors? And what is the split of male and female alleged victims?
It's about 25 out of the 120, but as you might imagine, since we did the press conference, that number is growing.
Sorry, 25 minors or?
25 minors out of the 120 clients, yes, sir. You know, and the minors, they kind of fall into two categories. One would be the category of individuals with stars in their eyes trying to break into the entertainment industry who were either scouted or somehow found their way to a studio or to a location where they were being screened, and either the allegation is Mr. Combs himself or those around him involved took advantage of these people in some sort of quid pro quo to try to make them a star. And, you know, in some of these cases, it was the parents who were essentially handing their child off to a group of people that they trusted and who they thought were going to make their child a star. That's one group. The second group of minors would be individuals who were recruited, whether it be in a hotel lobby, whether it be at a show from the crowd, invited to a after concert party that made its way to a hotel, whether it be to some of the parties that we all heard about. They went there at age 16. You know, there's a few that, for instance, attended a party in the Hamptons and they were only 16 and taken advantage of there. So, you know, it pretty runs the gamut. But, you know, it's the allegations obviously are very egregious. We have to be very careful and responsible about how we pursue these. These are individual cases, will be filed. Each case will live or die on its own merits. Each case will have one or more defendants. In some cases, they'll all, you know, they may be different. Some will be filed in New York. I would expect most of them will be filed because New York has a statute of limitations that's pretty generous. New York State has recognized that these types of allegations, it takes people a long time to come forward. It takes a lot of courage to come forward. So New York has recognized that. I think California has too. So I would expect most of these cases will be filed in those two states. And we're gonna pursue these cases aggressively. And the reason for the press conference is because, you know, I wanted to make sure that we, you know, Sean Combs obviously has been arrested. He's been indicted. His bail has been denied, I think, 3 times at this point. You know, I don't expect he's going anywhere. We want to make sure that every entity and every individual who had some role in this, that, you know, that we examine that, and if the law supports it, that we bring them in and make them a part of this case as well.
And just on that second point about the gender split here, there have been lots of rumors that it's not just women or girls who've been involved in being abused here, but also young boys and young men. Can you clarify how many of your own cases are male?
I would say that number is 50-50. According to the client group, it looks like when you try to, if you were to graph it, the number of males increased dramatically after 2015. You know, we've looked at this client group and vetted it in so many different ways, as you would expect, that you can see a trend that the number of males involved increased somewhere around the 2015 timeframe. I don't know why that is, but that's what the numbers show.
And based on the volume of claims you're getting, does that mean that these widespread rumors about Diddy's sexuality are likely to be true?
Yeah, I won't comment on that. I can only comment on the allegations that are being made, that will be made in a public filing. And I'll let people draw their own conclusions, but I will say that 50% of the alleged victims are in fact male. And that includes the minors that were minors at the time of the allegations.
I mean, it's truly shocking, some of these statistics you're giving. In relation to tapes or videos and stuff that you've been told about or has come into your possession, have you seen material, evidential material, which, in your estimation as a lawyer, could cross the line into criminal activity?
That's a difficult question. As most of your viewers know, the standard of proof in a civil case for
justice to be carried out, you got to
side. I didn't get to see.
And when you say
he did come on to me.
Yeah, I mean, in Choke No Joke.
We actually need to look at the households that produce a lot of these predators.
Of this and the amount of people stepping forward who said they were victimized based upon conduct either performed by or orchestrated by Sean Combs.
It's truly shocking. Tony Busby from Houston, thank you very much indeed. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, joining me now is the producer, director, and hip-hop documentarian Choke No Joke, the former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky, and the uncensored contributor Esther Krakauer. Esther, we've been sitting there. My jaw would have been dropping if I wasn't doing the interview. Your jaw was dropping about what we were hearing there. Some real extraordinary detail about this Houston lawyer's 120 cases.
Yeah.
What struck you from what you just heard?
I think the most shocking thing, and you saw my jaw drop when he said there are just as many men that came forward as women, and that actually it looked like the systemic abuse of men started really to ramp up in 2015. And I can't believe it. This is a complete monster, not because of the gender of his victims, but because clearly he had no limits. And I would actually, say that with regards to what his mother said, the statement that she released, she's clearly in denial. Right, because you can't have this wave of sort of people coming forward and this much evidence, even from the Cassie video, and still say that your son is.
Well, that's interesting.
That's
because,
bizarre.
If I hadn't seen that video, I've always taken the view with all of these things, particularly since the whole Me Too thing blew up. You've got to wait for justice to be carried out. You've got to see due process take place. I think it's so important. But when I saw that video, when I saw what Diddy was actually capable of, in plain sight in a hotel corridor with this girl that he was just beating up, that was so shocking that I thought wow, this guy, A, he's not the person I met several times, who was very charming and nice. He's somebody very different. And B, he's probably capable of pretty much anything.
Well, you know what made it worse? The apology video afterwards, where he didn't mention Cassie's name once.
No.
He sat there and pontificated about how he sought help.
It wasn't an apology, was it? It was more of I'm in the shit here. I need to get out of it.
Well, yeah, right? And it was just horrendous. And I think his mother is quite clearly in denial. I think on some deep level, she knows that this is a product of a household that she and I'm assuming his father ran. I never really think that people who are predators on that level just do it because, somehow they get power and they can get away with it. You really have to have a mentality, a psychology that's imbued in you from a young age. He either grew up in an environment where respecting people, particularly women, was just not a thing, or he was entitled and raised with this idea that actually if you amass enough power, you can get away with systemically abusing people. And I think we actually need to look at the households that produce a lot of these predators, a lot of these serial rapists and sexual assaulters, than just looking at them as individuals who've decided to go rogue. It's much more systemic than that.
Let me bring in Choke No Joke. Now, you were part of Diddy's entourage at a commercial event a year ago where he was welcomed like a king by fans and industry people. We've got some mullet of that. This is Diddy as we knew him before the scandal erupted. It was actually just before the video got leaked as well to CNN of him beating up his then girlfriend at the time. Are you as stunned as everybody else, Choke No Joke, about what's happened here to Diddy?
First of all, let me say hello to you, Piers Morgan. I am surprised at a lot of the allegations, but I want to correct you. I wasn't a part of his entourage. I was there independently, documenting as I do, and
I see. Yeah.
I know him from the past, so yeah, I was there to document the revolt.
But you have attended, unless I'm mistaken, you have attended these freak-off parties at the invitation of Diddy on occasion. And there was one party, you said, where Diddy tried to come on to you and looked at him like he was Beyonce in a bikini, you said. You were invited by Diddy personally, an industry after party. You said there were also women there who were known in industry to be gay and so on. I mean, just when you say you're not shocked by some of this.
Let me clear that up because you like mashing a bunch of stuff in, together. All right, one, it wasn't a freak-off party. Well, it may have been. I'm not sure because I didn't go inside. But I wasn't invited by him. I was actually with Little Kim and Hillary Weston, who was Little Kim's manager at the time. And we had went to the BET Awards, and then we went to an after party. At the after party is when Diddy or Sean Combs invited Kim to meet us at the CEO, Steve Rifkin's house. When we went to Steve Rifkin's house, which would be the after party, I was at that house where that's where Diddy came on to me at. And there was a lot of people there, but I was on the outside, the back porch of the house. I never went inside.
Okay.
So whatever went on inside, I didn't get to see.
And when you say Diddy...
But he did come on to me.
Yeah, I mean, so tell me about that. I mean, what happened?
As far as what?
Him coming on to you.
He just made a pass at me, and I denied it, all with looks, and that was it.
How did you respond?
And, that wasn't it. You know, once I realized that he was hitting on me, and I looked at my environment and realized that most of the people there were gay or bisexual, then I caught on to where we were at, and I went and I grabbed Hillary Weston, and I pulled her outside, and I told her, hey, Diddy's over here hitting on me. Go get Little Kim. We are leaving. And that's what we did.
Because there have been a lot of rumors about Diddy's sexuality, and I think it's only relevant in the sense that the lawyer I just spoke to in Texas says that half of the victims that he's representing are male, which would suggest here that, and they're all connected in some way to Diddy, obviously claims at this stage, but that would certainly suggest that Diddy is at very least bisexual.
I would believe that to be true. From him passing on to me, a straight man don't hit on a straight man. But can I say one thing in regards to your last guest that was saying that his mother's in denial? I don't think that's a fair statement for her to say, and I don't like the fact that she said he was raised in a household with a mother and father and blah, 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 because I'm a guy that grew up in the projects. My mother always made sure I did right. My father always made sure I did right. But when I got on outside of the door of the other threshold, the streets told me different. And I did a lot of things that my mother couldn't even fathom today that I did. So when she says that, you know, his mother's in denial or she may be part of the reason for his behavior, a lot of our behavior comes from being in the street and
Hold on, I think you misunderstood
and I don't think that
saying.
was a fair statement.
I think you misunderstood what I was saying. First of all, of course, individuals are responsible for their own actions, but individuals are not dug up from the ground or hatched from eggs. They're raised in homes. They're raised with values and cultures. I'm not blaming his mother in any way, shape, or form, but any parent whose child is accused of these sorts of crimes will undoubtedly just reflect and think, is there anything that I could have done? That's all I was insinuating. And also, she is in denial because we've all seen that Cassie video. Someone who is capable of treating Cassie like that, dragging her around like a rag doll. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be shocked when allegations of this kind come forward, particularly with the stuff like 1,000 bottles of baby oil in his home. First of all, what is he doing with all of that? And secondly, those poor babies that have been deprived of their moisturizer, right? At some point, if you're looking at it objectively, you cannot be surprised after that Cassie video came out that he is also capable of doing the things that are being alleged against him. That's not to blame his mother. That is to say that if you're looking at this objectively, which of course she won't be able to because it's her son, you have to believe there's an element of denial there. That's not to say that people who grew up in disadvantaged situations
here's the truth.
will always turn out this way.
The truth is we don't know, right? We don't know. I think it's perfectly possible, as Chokner just said, that you can be one thing with your parents, but if you then get out on the streets and you get led down various bad places, you could be something which maybe you're the one in denial to your parents. I can absolutely believe that to be but the truth is we don't know. But look, she won't be the first and won't be the last mother to defend the indefensible with her son. Let me bring in Andrew here. You're a former federal prosecutor. We've heard from a civil case lawyer who's got 120 civil actions. And I said to him, has he seen stuff that passes the bar of criminality? He said, it's very hard to say because you need to go through the whole process of building a criminal case. From everything you're seeing about this case, do you think that there is any doubt that P. Diddy is going to end up going to prison for a long time?
There's a mountain of evidence against him, and the federal prosecutors who brought this case, especially in the complex way that they did, are sure to get convictions along the way. I think that their charge sheet is indicative of years and years of evidence that they have deeply investigated at this point that will lead to undoubtedly convictions, and that will lead to a significant amount of jail time. That said, there are going to be battles along the way, both in the criminal realm as well as the civil realm, because the devil is often in the details. So the prosecutors, as well as the civil attorneys, are going to have to prove their case. And in most of the situations, they're going to have to prove it on kind of a day in, day out basis. On this date, this specific thing happened. The general idea that there were orgies that happened, or the general idea that drugs may have been present, or some people did drugs. Some people had feelings like if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to advance. Some of that stuff is not going to actually raise the charges with sufficient proof to prove either in the criminal realm or the civil realm. They're really going to have to get those criminalized elements, or in the civil case, things that look like criminal actions, the kind of removal of consent, or the pushing through these acts without consent present. And when you see over 100 people in a civil lawsuit, certainly there is concern that people are jumping on a bandwagon. Perhaps they were present and they're just saying that something non-consensual happened in one of those situations. So each of those cases are going to have to be tested. And I think the final point on, especially with Mr. Busby speaking earlier, saying that there are others that might be involved. I think the feds are going to be looking at all of those people involved and kind of giving them an option. Were you a victim? Are you somebody who we can have say something against Diddy? Or is this something where you're part of the conspiracy and we're going to add charges? Similar in the civil case. He's not naming names. Is he trying to reach hush money kind of settlements here? I think that as he's pushing forward the narrative that there were many people involved, we want to hear those names, and we want to be assured that there's not hush money agreements going on, and that he's not simply dangling the idea that he's going to drop these names before he has the opportunity to reach a settlement.
Yeah, I mean, on Fox News, their lawyer Brian Claypool said if Combs doesn't testify in this case, he's dead on arrival. Would you concur with that?
Testimony is something that I guess it has only some value to it, because of course he's going to deny it if he were to testify. I think what the case really comes down to is the corroborating evidence. It is difficult when an alleged victim goes in and simply testifies that this happened to me. Any case, whether it's criminal or civil, juries want some sort of corroboration. They want the feeling from the alleged victim that it happened and that it's reliable, but they want to look at that surrounding information. So are there videos that show it? And how can you interpret the different things that are in the video? What does the timeline look like, the text messages, the conversation surrounding the events? So it's all going to come down to corroboration on those individual cases. As I said, the devil's in the details. They're really going to have to prove the nuance of each case.
Yeah. I mean, Chuck, you've chronicled the hip-hop world for a long time. I can't pretend that I'm massively shocked that the hip-hop world is full of guys behaving badly and displaying, at the very, very least, rampant misogyny. I mean, the lyrics are full of it. So there's been a kind of brazen celebration of misogyny for a long time in the hip-hop world. Is it really shocking that Diddy and potentially other big names in the hip-hop world have been, holding out the carrot of record contracts and stuff and using their fame and money to drug and abuse people?
Well, for me, I've been in hip-hop for 30 years, even before I was born. I have a documentary out called The Hip Hop Nucleus, a documentary on the Tunnel, which is out right now. But I've been in the club since Diddy was performing at the Tunnel. I've been shooting him before he was a millionaire. So I've seen all these guys come from nothing and go to millionaires, to multimillionaires, to billionaires, allegedly, right? But throughout my travels in the industry, once I got to a certain point, like BET, I started to notice a different change in the industry where it was more of gatekeepers and, you know, I had to succumb to homosexuality. There's drugs being passed around. And, you know, I don't do these type of things. You know, my mother's a recovering addict over 30 years, so I would never do drugs. But yes, these things are a part of the culture, and the sexuality is a part of the culture. And if you don't succumb to it, like myself, my career suffered because I didn't succumb to homosexuality or the drugs.
I mean, Esther, it's, you know, like I say, I can't pretend I'm massively shocked. It is shocking to see the scale of it.
Yeah.
But am I shocked that top hip hop stars, you know, were having pretty awful parties where they did pretty awful things? I can't pretend I am.
I mean, I'm a bit shocked at the lack of judgment. So P. Diddy had friends, right? He had accomplices, he had friends, he had acquaintances. Other than sort of the ground staff, the infrastructure that kept his sick operation ticking. You know, he had high-profile friends. I'm not going to name them because I don't want it to seem libelous, but they were household names. They were celebrities in their own rights. They were artists, they were actresses and all of that. All of whom, in the years that they've been friends with him had at least seen or suspected some sort of character defects, to put it you know, nicely. And they still remain friends with him. They still chose to associate with him. And I draw contrast to 50 Cent, who I hope in my life I never get on the bad side of, because he is a complete bulldog. He's ruthless, right? But 50 Cent and Eminem always made it clear that they never...
Together?
Sorry?
I said, can I say birds of a feather flock together?
Yeah, well, yes, exactly.
All those people that you are naming about that's around Diddy, been around him, all these people, they all circled and they praised him at his time. Just 1 year ago, Diddy had the #1 album in the country with the Love album. He was celebrated. He got Lifetime Achievement Awards. He got the Key to the City. They all celebrated him because they all play in the same cesspool. But now that he's in trouble, the reason why you don't see no support is because they might get pulled in. But Diddy lived a rock star life, no similar to Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith. All these guys had groupies. They all did drugs. They all went on tour. The only difference between R. Kelly and Hugh Hefner is Hugh Hefner made it to the jail.